It's 0-0 draw between Como and Inter in the Coppa Italia semi-final first leg. Gab 0.07 XG for the league leaders is a bit embarrassing.
Yeah, I don't think they'll care because we're looking at this over 2 legs. The second leg, by the way, isn't for like 5 weeks because of Inter's commitments elsewhere. I thought that Fabregas made an interesting call in dropping Duvicas for this game, effectively not playing a center forward. A lot of possession, but I still think Como should have taken their opportunities.
The discussion starts with a 0-0 draw in the Coppa Italia semifinal first leg between Inter and Napoli, where Napoli had more possession but failed to take their chances, while Inter seemed more focused on their upcoming derby against AC Milan. The panel then shifts to Real Madrid's shocking 1-0 home defeat, highlighting that although several players were missing, including Kylian Mbappe, the team still delivered one of their worst performances. Antonio Rudiger was heavily criticized for a dangerous challenge on Diego Rico that many believe should have resulted in a red card. The pundits also questioned Real Madrid's manager, suggesting he may be out of his depth after multiple defeats to smaller teams, while fans even booed the team and called for Florentino Perez's resignation. To make matters worse, Rodrygo suffered a serious injury, which could impact both Real Madrid and Brazil despite their attacking depth. Finally, the panel mentions Barcelona beating Atlético Madrid 3-0, progressing 4-3 on aggregate, with young talent Marc Bernal scoring twice and Pedri also impressing.
And I would expect them to create a little more. Inter, of course, I don't think it's any surprise. They're looking past this to the derby against Milan. If you win that, you're 13 clear, and I'm ready to crown you champions. All right, Jules, we're not done. We have more quick hits.
Yeah.
So after hearing that discussion, there are quite a few big talking points here, and honestly, some of them raise serious questions about the biggest clubs in Europe right now. First of all, that Coppa Italia semifinal between Inter and Napoli ending 0-0 might look boring on paper, but context matters. Inter clearly seem to be managing their priorities. With a massive derby against AC Milan coming up, the focus is obviously on securing the league title. If they win that derby and go 13 points clear, the title race is basically over. From Inter's perspective, a cautious first leg is not a disaster at all. But for Napoli, it's a slightly different story. When you dominate possession like that, you have to create more, and you definitely have to take your chances. In big knockout ties, wasting opportunities can come back to haunt you in the second leg. Now shifting to Real Madrid, this is where things get really worrying. Losing 1-0 at home to a team you should beat comfortably is never acceptable for a club of that level. Yes, there were injuries and absentees like Kylian Mbappe, but Real Madrid squads are supposed to have depth. That excuse can only go so far. And the situation with Antonio Rudiger is another major talking point. If the reports are accurate and that challenge on Diego Rico was intentional, then honestly, it's shocking that VAR didn't step in. For a club with Madrid's reputation, moments like that create unnecessary controversy.
Yes.
Real Madrid fall at home to Getafe 1-0. Jules, plenty of absentees, most notably that Kylian Mbappe.
Yeah.
But is it fair to say they got bored of last? And how lucky is Antonio Rudiger?
Yeah, let's start with Rudiger. Very lucky.
But the bigger concern might be the overall performance level. Fans booing at the Bernabeu tells you everything you need to know. When supporters start questioning the manager and even calling for Florentino Perez to step down, the pressure becomes enormous. And then comes another blow, Rodrygo's injury. Some people might say he isn't always the main star in that attack, but he brings something different: pace, creativity, and flexibility across the front line. Losing him right now could hurt Madrid more than people think. Meanwhile, over in Spain, Barcelona quietly keep building momentum, beating Atlético Madrid 3-0 and advancing on aggregate. Young players like Marc Bernal stepping up alongside talents like Pedri show that Barcelona's future might actually be brighter than many expected. And when you look at the bigger picture, the question becomes simple. Are Barcelona rebuilding at the perfect time, while Real Madrid are starting to show cracks? Soccer ball.
Atletico Madrid will face Real Sociedad in the Copa del Rey final, Gab, after they beat Athletic Club de Bilbao in the second leg of their semi-final as well. More love for Rino Matarazzo?
Of course, more love for Rino Matarazzo. The man just keeps going. He's turned them around in the league. I thought they were pretty much in control of it.
The panel continues by discussing how Atlético Madrid have changed their playing style, no longer relying purely on defensive football, but instead trying to control games with the ball. They also mention Atlético progressing and setting up a Copa del Rey final against Real Madrid after beating Athletic Club Bilbao, praising coach Rino Matarazzo for turning the team around and getting talented players performing again. The conversation then shifts to Marseille's dramatic cup exit, where they twice came from behind but were eventually eliminated on penalties, with criticism aimed at the decision to let an 18-year-old take the final penalty. Another highlight was Atlanta's late equalizer against Lazio, with the match played in a nearly empty stadium due to fan protests against Lazio's president. Finally, the panel discusses a controversial scheduling decision where PSG's league game was moved, giving them 5 days to prepare for a Champions League match against Chelsea, while Chelsea will only have 2 days of rest, raising questions about fairness between leagues. The segment ends with the surprising news that Morocco coach Walid Regragui could step down just months before the World Cup.
This game, they were 1-0 up, obviously, from the first leg.
Yeah.
Penalty came late. They have really good players who weren't working, and that's what a good coach does. He gets really good players working again.
Yeah.
Just when you thought some normality had returned to Marseille, they allowed Toulouse to twice come from behind and then knock them out of the Coupe de France on penalty.
Now, continuing from those talking points, there are some really interesting developments across European football, especially when it comes to how teams are evolving and the challenges they're facing this season. Let's start with Atlético Madrid, because for years we associated this team with one thing: defensive discipline. Under Diego Simeone, Atlético built their identity around being extremely hard to break down. But what we're seeing now is a clear shift. This is a team that wants to control the ball more and actually dominate games offensively. And reaching the Copa del Rey final against Real Madrid shows that this approach might actually be working. Credit also has to go to Rino Matarazzo, because turning talented players into a functioning, confident team is what great coaching is all about. When players who weren't performing suddenly start delivering again, that's usually a sign the manager has found the right formula. But not every big club is enjoying that kind of stability. Take Marseille, for example. Getting knocked out of the cup on penalties after fighting back twice is already painful. But the real question is the decision-making in that shootout. Letting an 18-year-old take the 5th penalty in such a high-pressure moment is a huge gamble. Sometimes young players become heroes, but other times the pressure is simply too much.
Yeah, Toulouse turning the AC on at the Velodrome massively at the end. A lot of tensions then. Ethan Ranieri missed the final pen for Marseille. I'm not really sure why an 18-year-old is taking the 5th penalty in such a big game like that. Quarterfinal, the objective was to win this.
Somebody else bottled it, maybe?
To save their season, maybe. I don't know. But
then there's the situation in Italy with Lazio and Atlanta, where the game was played in a nearly empty stadium because of fan protests. That atmosphere, or lack of it, can completely change a match. Football without fans always feels strange, and it shows just how powerful supporters can be when they want to send a message to the club. And finally, the scheduling debate around PSG and Chelsea raises a bigger issue in European football. PSG getting 5 days to prepare for a Champions League tie, while Chelsea only have 2 days, doesn't exactly feel like a level playing field. Different leagues handle scheduling differently, but when teams from different countries compete in the same tournament, these advantages can really matter. And then there's the surprising situation with Morocco's coach possibly stepping down just months before the World Cup. After the incredible success Morocco had recently, that kind of instability could be a huge risk at the worst possible time. So across Europe right now, we're seeing something fascinating. Some teams are building momentum and evolving, while others are dealing with chaos, pressure, and big decisions that could define their entire season. Soccer ball.
absolutely, because he won the Copa Libertadores, obviously not that long ago. Remember the Club World Cup. They played the final of the Intercontinental Cup, obviously against PSG as well. But they started the league
They also
poorly.
won the league in Brazil.
Yeah,
they won the
cup.
Brazil
Yeah,
Cup.
no, he's had great
All this in
success.
18 months, less than 18 months.
And not just that, but they've played really good football too, with a very strong squad.
This segment focuses on coaching changes and departures around the world. The panel discusses Walid Regragui's situation with Morocco, explaining that pressure from the federation and its president made things difficult. And while he is highly rated, he may be replaced by Maimed Houadi, a coach with Moroccan European experience who recently led Morocco's U20 team to success. They also debate where Regragui could next apply, suggesting he might need a smaller project before moving to a top 5 European club. The discussion then moves to Filipe Luis leaving Flamengo despite winning an 8-0 game, highlighting how unexpected coaching departures could be even after major successes like the Copa Libertadores and Club World Cup. The panel notes Flamengo's strong squad and investment but poor start to the league, as well as recent cup losses, suggesting that Luis's coaching reputation is solid and that he may seek opportunities in Europe. Overall, the discussion emphasizes how volatile coaching careers can be, even for highly accomplished managers.
Let's be honest, they pumped a lot of money in that squad to bring back some players from Europe as well to Brazil, like Paqueta, obviously, but still not happy with the start of the league. They're only 11th. More importantly, maybe they lost that Recopa against Lanús over the 2 legs, which I think was a massive blow to them.
Continuing on the coaching front, there's a lot to unpack because football isn't just about what happens on the pitch. It's also about how managers handle pressure, expectations, and sometimes politics. Take Walid Regragui with Morocco. The criticism and lack of support from the federation clearly made his job extremely tough, especially after their near success in the last tournament. Regragui is highly respected, but even the best coaches can struggle when the environment isn't supportive. The decision to potentially replace him with Maimed Houadi, who has dual European and Moroccan experience and recently won the U20 World Cup, could be very smart. It shows that federations are looking for someone who understands both the local and European football cultures, a balance that could pay off at the World Cup. Then you look at South America, and the story of Filipe Luis at Flamengo is just wild. Winning an 8-0 semifinal and still being sacked sounds absurd, but it highlights how quickly things can change in football management. Flamengo's squad is full of talent. They've won the Copa Libertadores and even competed at the Club World Cup, yet a poor start in the domestic league and a cup defeat against Lanús were enough to end his tenure. It's a reminder that reputation and past success only get you so far. Results are king.
He doesn't have any worry to have. He will find another top club. It's probably time for him to even come to Europe. There's nothing I think he can still achieve in South America. So I'm curious to see where he goes next because I think he's very talented.
Yeah, they lost the opening week to Sao Paulo in the Brasileirão, and I think that kind of sent him on.
What's interesting is the pattern here. Great managers like Regragui or Luis are often pushed out or face tough challenges not because of ability, but because of external pressures, be it federation politics, fan expectations, or league results. At the same time, these coaches still have huge opportunities. Europe, in particular, is calling. Someone like Luis could easily step into a top project, proving again that managerial careers can pivot fast for better or worse. In short, football is unforgiving. Success doesn't guarantee job security, and timing, politics, and circumstance play as much a role as tactics on the field. That's the reality every manager faces today. Soccer ball.
They will go with the next team down who missed out on the Asian playoffs, and that would be the United Arab Emirates, who could find themselves being pulled back in. It's an ugly situation.
Yeah.
It's not important in the grander scheme of things, but in a footballing sphere, it's pretty darn important.
This part covers a mix of football performance, geopolitics, and fan controversies. The panel begins by discussing a dominant league team missing out on a domestic double, acknowledging their strong season, but noting they could have achieved more. They then move to the potential withdrawal of Iran from the World Cup due to conflict, exploring the contingency plans for Iraq or the UAE to replace them, and highlighting the broader cultural and emotional significance of football for Iranian citizens and the diaspora. The discussion touches on protests by Iranian players at the Women's Asian Cup, emphasizing how sport can be a platform for political expression. Finally, the segment shifts to a fan dispute in Major League Soccer. Ho Chun sued Inter Miami for Lionel Messi not playing, winning $350,000. The panel debates the fairness of this, arguing that football is a team sport and clubs are not obliged to guarantee a single player's presence, while also highlighting the tension between marketing promises and fan expectations. The segment closes with reminders of upcoming marquee games like the FA Cup clash between Manchester City and Newcastle and the Milan Derby.
More Iran, many players from the national team did not sing the anthem when they faced South Korea at the Asian Women's Cup in Australia. Jules, this was a really moving moment when I watched the video. It just can't be business as usual in these conditions.
No, you're right. And we knew they were playing, obviously, while their country.
GoalLine debate script, 2-minute opinion segment. Wrapping up this segment, there are a few fascinating themes that go beyond just goals and results. First, let's talk about dominant league teams missing out on domestic doubles. Even when a team is crushing it in the league and has arguably the best squad, football can be cruel. That gap between expectation and achievement reminds us that every competition has its own rhythm and nothing is guaranteed, even for the giants of the game. You still take the league title, sure, but the what could have been story always lingers. Then there's the matter of Iran potentially withdrawing from the World Cup. This is one of those rare moments where football intersects with geopolitics. The contingency planning, possibly bringing in Iraq or the UAE, shows how tightly football is tied to international circumstances. But more than logistics, the Iranian team and their players have become a symbol for millions around the world. When some players refused to sing the anthem at the Women's Asian Cup, it was a quiet but powerful protest. It's a reminder that football isn't just entertainment. It's a platform for expression, and it carries enormous cultural significance.
It was at war, and we kind of expected a reaction in a way, or some sort of protest or something, which they gave. The men had given one a few years ago, I think, too. So it's not new, but I think he's very powerful, very good. I know we said that football and politics can't always.
And finally, we have the bizarre story of Ho Chun suing Inter Miami over Lionel Messi not playing, winning $350,000. Let's be real. Football is a team sport, not Inter Messi. Clubs have to make decisions in the team's best interest, not cater to individual expectations, no matter how high-profile the player. This lawsuit feels like a strange mix of entitlement and misinterpreted marketing. Fans pay to watch a team, not a single superstar. And this should reinforce that football is about collective effort, not just individual names on the back of a shirt. So whether it's missed doubles, World Cup uncertainty, or legal drama in MLS, these stories all highlight the unpredictability and the human side of the game. Football isn't perfect, but that's exactly what makes it fascinating. Soccer ball,